Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me here today as we get to talk about one of my favorite subjects, comic books. My name is Jose. I love comic books. I love talking about them. I love sharing them with you. Feel free to follow me on social media if you would like. Links are in the description below. I've also posted a link to the Marvel fan site that'll have plot synopsis and character bios for this issue. The New Mutants, number 13 from 1983. I like these covers that have a little bit of um, dialogue in them here. So we've got Kitty Pride calling or crying here, and Cannonball saying, "Forget it, Kitty. You're not good enough for us ex babies." And of course, we have the New Mutants. We have Mirage, Wolfsbane, Sunspot, new member. Um, oh my God, Magma, and then of course Cannonball. Now, Karma is not available yet. She's still presumed dead, but as I mentioned, Karma will eventually return here. So we got Kitty. Good cover here. Brett Blevins is the cover artist here of Kitty, sort of going phasing through this tree trunk here as the New Mutants chase. So, all right. School Days, Chris Claremont, Sal Buscema, and Tom Mandrake. It's the same creative team that we've been having. Glynis Ween and Tom Orzechowski continue rounding it up. And Louis Simonson is still around as editor. Eventually, Ann Nocenti will take over. Um, the one thing that I always found, and probably the reason that New Mutants didn't sell as well as X Men is number one, the costumes, and number two, the splash pages like this. Just you open it up and so here, Mirage is introducing Magma to Professor Xavier, who, by the way, is still not walking, even though we all know that, and eventually I believe he will walk. But Chris Claremont is really trying to, for some reason, the okay. So this is right before Secret Wars, and throughout the entirety of Secret Wars, he's walking. So yes, we know why he can't walk. It's been covered. I have a playlist, by the way. I started with New Mutants number one. I have a X Universe playlist, which includes X Men, New Mutants, and miscellaneous stuff like Wolverine and Marvel Fanfare. Then I also have an X Men playlist. Everything in reading order. Feel free to check that out if you would like. So it's been covered, but the fact that we still have him, even putting it. So the reason why people that can't walk wear these things is for circulation, to keep them warm. They don't have as good circulation going on in the legs, so they use this blanket. But his circulation is fine because his legs are healed. But they keep drawing him with this cover here, so, or with the blanket on it, and the fact that he's still in the wheelchair even though his legs have been healed for, I mean, Chris Claremont's really milking it. And so it's not until after Secret Wars that I think you see Professor X completely get rid of the wheelchair here. So Mirage is introducing, as I mentioned, Magma. Professor thanks and welcomes her to the school and to the New Mutants here. Magma thanks him and asks if he's a mutant. And he says yes, and then asks if the two of them can be alone for a moment so they can get to know each other here. Then he hopes Amara is able to make the adjustments, of course, because as covered, again, I have a playlist. She went from living like it was the first century to now it's the 20th century. And Cannonball says if she needs help, Danny, we'll give it to her. What else are friends for? And so Amara asks what is a mutant, and he of course explains to her what it is, someone with powers. And then he talks to her telepathically here, And she, of course, is like, "Hey, I heard you said nothing yet. I heard the words in my mind." And so he lets her know what a telepath is, and then says, "This is her room." And so um, it's what she was used to. So they made it in uh, basically every detail here. Professor X says some of the stuff was brought by her, and some of the other stuff he got from the memory image. And so he thought making stuff familiar would help her fit in better. So she asks if her thoughts are going to be secret or sacred, and he says that uh, he won't be doing that. Of course, after Secret Wars, he kind of becomes a little bit more like, yeah, sure, why not? But prior to Secret Wars, he was like, yeah, I won't do this. So she says Xavier reminds her of her dad, and she can't get over how precise this room is. I like this part here. And no magic lamps to turn night to day at the touch of a lever. Electricity, Danny called it. I've so much to learn. So there's a bit of an earthquake here, and she realizes she's causing it. You can see the crack because she's nervous, and so she hasn't quite learned how to control her power. And she's got the powers of not so much like avalanche, but the magma underneath it. So we go with it. These powers are so outrageous, but um, it is what it is, people. This is fantasy. And so Professor felt it, but sees that it's subduing. And he did say that he was about to calm her down psychically, but glad he doesn't have to do that. And so Xavier says, until I've established the parameters of her ability and she's gained some measure of control over it, I'd best maintain a constant light rapport with her. That way I can monitor her emotional state and prevent any accidental tectonic catastrophes. That's probably a good idea, Professor. So, so you see kind of what I mean here. We're a couple of pages in, and there's no action. There's no. It's what Chris Claremont really wanted to do, a soap opera, and Chris Claremont's given a ton of leeway, but because of the lack of costumes, I think this book um, would have been better if the kids, later on when Chris Claremont leaves, they get their costumes. But of course, Claremont left. So the book, the artists, everything else had changed. And the book really, Brett Blevins, who did the cover, just his art didn't take. This book was hovering near cancellation at one point before Rob Liefeld comes in to save it. But and I love Louise Simonson, and she's a great writer, but Rob Liefeld is the one that saved the book. I know that she says it's her writing was also a contribution, which is true. However, people were in it for the Rob Liefeld. Because Simonson, like I said, the book prior to Rob Liefeld coming in was nearing for cancellation. But during this time, it was one of their mid sellers, so not at the bottom of the heap. So it continued on. And it will pick up much better after Bill Sienkiewicz comes in. And I'm going to go through the entire Chris Claremont run. All right, so you can see here the New Mutants are doing a barbecue or grilling out, and Sunspot here is like, I'd rather send out for pizza or Chinese food. so, so she makes a snide comment that Sunspot is not helping with the chores here, and he says, "I'm willing to cook, Danny, if you're willing to risk food poisoning." So. And she's like, hey, you'll learn here. And this is, of course, Stevie Hunter. So Mara comes and introduces herself to Stevie. And Stevie then introduces herself. Stevie was started in Uncanny X-Men, and she's the dance teacher for Kitty Pryde. So she's a bit of a background character. And they're all looking at her like how she looks, and they're all like, "Oh my God, she's so formal." And of course, we're not, and so And Amara feels embarrassed, and they're like, "Don't be." Even though she's thinking it, she had made a comment above it, and Roberto says, "If there is a fault, dear lady, it is ours alone, but well worth it for the privilege of beholding such loveliness as yours." And look at Danny here, just annoyed here. Roberto da Costa, you silver-tongued devil. Given half a chance, you would probably charm any woman alive. The riff's working on Amara. She's actually smiling. I wish she'd use it once on me. So she's got, um, you know, the neat thing about teenagers is you get plenty of drama in there. And so here comes Cannonball here, and he brought in some drinks here. Moxie, it says here. So she's impressed by it, and he's gonna show her a trick. And Professor Xavier, and he's like, "Cannonball, this is neither the time nor place for such a display. Your ability to maneuver is nowhere near as accomplished as you believe." Um, and he says, "You're looping too wide, Sam. Pull up before." And of course, the he crashes, and down come all the bottles, which get her wet, and he apologizes for it because he was trying to make a fool, and she's so angry. She's like, "Dolt, this was my mother's. One of the few things of her left when she died, and you've ruined it." And of course, Danny's like, we'll we'll get it as good as new. They can be cleaned. Don't be upset. Sam didn't do it on purpose. The klutz, it was an accident. Of course, Amara is uh, angry and stuff like that, so it opens up the earth, and Roberto grabs her, but of course, magma starts uh, pulling out of there, and it catches this tree on fire. So Sunspot, using his power, grabs the tree and throws it to the nearby lake to douse the flames here. And Rain turns into a wolf to go find Amara, but she finds her and didn't go far here. Danny says, they all share a rapport that the professor, I don't know how it works, but the professor keeps it so they can communicate with each other telepathically. And she says, "Don't let her know that we're here. She wants to be alone, so we'll let her work things out for herself, at least for now. We'll keep an eye on her, though, in case she needs us." So Karma feels bad about what she did. She needs to control her temper. Could have killed him. Could have killed herself. And then she says something here that if Xavier can't help her control his powers, she can't allow herself to live. So now we are going into the Hellfire Club, or Shaw. So they're in a complex here making Sentinels here, and we have Valerie Cooper, um, Henry Peter Gyrich, and then Sebastian Shaw from the Hellfire Club. And these are the latest Sentinels. No purple though this time. They are blue and gray. So, uh, Valerie Cooper, who will be very important in Peter David's run of X Factor, says this is very impressive, and Peter basically says, appearances are deceiving. They've yet to be able to hold any mutant. And so they're going to initiate a test sequence here. And here comes the Sentinel. Um, and Shaw says, "We learn from failure as much as success. Eventually we'll set it right." And Valerie says, "Eventually may be too late." And Peter says, "What's going on?" And of course, malfunction. The robot is going wild. So, and he's going into the room here. The rogue operators penetrated the command computer system. It's taken over the Sentinel. And of course, Peter Garrich is saying, "Do something, man, before it brings the entire battalion down about our ears." And the guy's like, "We're trying to regain control, sir, but the rogues locked us out. All of our command programs are being bypassed and neutralized." So, of course, Sebastian Shaw is a mutant. So it probably knows that. And it says that's impossible. Cut all outside access to our computer. Shut down the entire system if you have to. Sever the rogue's link with the Sentinel. And this guy's like, no good. It switched to an independent operation. It'll keep obeying the orders the rogue gave it. Then I've no choice but to resort to the self-destruct. And boom goes the Sentinel here. And so $5 million. It says at that time it would have been billions. The government, they're happy to waste taxpayer money. It's not their money. So they're like, we'll just tax these idiots more. So that's not what he says. That's just me. So, um, so he goes, $5 million down the drain. It's an attack on the federal government. I want the people responsible for this outrage. Trace the computer that accessed our network. Anyway, you can, no matter how long it takes. When I get my hands on those jerks, so help me, I'll make them wish they'd never been born. It's probably Shaw. So, all right. So now we're back at the X mansion here, and this is Doug Ramsey, who is going to be everyone's blonde. Goodness gracious. Um, he's going to be Cypher when Warlock ends up coming. So it was actually not Shaw like I thought it was. So it was Kitty Pryde and Doug Ramsey, who are computer wizards. Even in '84, people think that the internet is a new thing. The internet actually was not available for, well, I shouldn't say it was. It has existed since the '70s. It just became something else. But the idea of just using a modem to hack into things, that's been going on forever. So Doug Ramsey says, "Well, we lost control of what we had." And Kitty says, "Can they trace us?" And he says, "I don't think so. We came in through a back door, caught them by surprise. You can bet that won't happen again. What were you looking for anyway?" And she was just curious here. So, and Kitty says, "Oh, she was just curious about Sebastian Shaw and that club, of course. She doesn't want to tell that, um, you know, about the Hellfire Club and what Shaw really is." So Doug Ramsey belongs to a hacker club here, and they're hoping to be able to get more access into the Shaw Industry system, and can't believe that the first thing they do is access the government system. So now he knows that this guy is uh, there's more than meets the eyes here. And so Katie's like, I wonder if this means Shaw and the government are working together, and if they know who and what he really is. So anyway, so Kitty says, let's go eat. So and Cypher's like, yep, we've been at this for hours here. So if you kind of look, not a much, I mean, there's a lot of happening as far as um story, like of reading it, but this isn't your typical superhero romp. I love the shadows being done as they're heading down um to to eat here. So of course they talk a little bit about her parents divorcing, and she looks at the time and says, "Gotta go." And so as she's going, Xavier's like, "Kitty, return to the mansion immediately." She's like, "Already on my way." So she phases through and off she goes. Again, this is actually a beautiful panel here with silhouette, 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 and this is just very pretty. So I like it. So all right, and so she finds Amara here. Real quick here, Doug is Peter. So this takes place after Kitty was almost married off to Caliban, and that's the Doug that Colossus is jealous of because he's never met him, and Kitty spends a lot of time with him here. But she just makes mention that he has a skill with computer languages. So anyway, after she finds Amara, she says, "I'm Kitty Pryde. I'm one of the Professor Xavier's students. Are you okay?" And she's like, "I don't need any help. I prefer to be by myself here." And, Kitty sees her age, that they're similar, and she goes, "You sure there's nothing I can do for you?" Of course, Amara, you can see it in her eyes here, kind of getting mad. "Are you deaf, girl? Did you not hear what I said? I want to be alone." And she's like, "All right." And so she makes a point here. Every time she tries to talk to another teenager, they sort of snap at her, and she doesn't seem that to fit with anyone except the X-Men. And then she makes an exception, except with Doug. We mesh real well. But then what about Ileana? That's like her bestie. So, um, and then she wonders if that's going to have a problem with Peter, who she's in love. Now, keep in mind, she's 14 years old. I have already made mention of this a billion times. We'll make it a billion and one. It is inappropriate. Peter Colossus is an adult. He's a young adult. He's like 18 and 19, but again, it's 14 years old. So, um, and I understand that Chris Claremont makes his characters um older. They act older than they really are, but so anyway, she wonders if she's gonna start loving Doug too, and then asks um what the New Mutants are doing there, and of course, Sunspot's like, "We're looking after our own." So she's like, "Well, if you're looking for Amara," she says she can take care of her own. And she goes, "Why are you guys so touchy?" And of course, Danny says, "You've made no secrets of your dislike for us ex babies," which is how she feels about the New Mutants, because she was with the X-Men when the New Mutants were created, so she felt that it was a demotion. So, and I totally get it, but Claremont's really feeding off that for this story here. So Kitty says, "I can take a hint," and Danny says, "Do better than that. Take a hike." And then Professor X, "Catherine, report to my office. Report to my office. I will brook no further delay." And so they all, of course, could feel that, and they're like, "Oh, you made the professor very angry." And Bobby says, "Kitty may be in pain, Danny, but I wouldn't be in her shoes now for the world." So, all right. So, Professor X says you had a training session scheduled for this evening. It isn't the first time you've missed, Kitty. For all you're an X-Men. We still know very little about the nature and extent of your phasing powers. And Kitty says, "I didn't do it on purpose. When Doug and I were working, we tend to lose track of everything else." And the professor says, "Kitty, no one is more pleased than I to see you making friends outside of the school and exercising your intellect to its fullest capacity. But when you joined the X-Men, you chose to accept certain responsibilities. That is true. Your teammates' lives depend on you, and yours does on them. So," and Xavier continues, you must decide, young lady, whether or not you are prepared to honor those obligations. Furthermore, this idiotic feud between you and the New Mutants has gone far enough. Novices they may be, but hardly ex-babies," he says in quotation, "especially when two of them are older than you." And Kitty's like, "Is that all, sir?" And Xavier says, "Think back on how you felt when you first realized who and what you were, the excitement and the terror. Help the mutants. Perhaps in doing so, you'll be able to come to terms with yourself." And she goes, "I'll try. If you want me, I'll be in my room." So she just got scolded here. So, all right. So I've kind of been rambling on, and we still have so much stuff here. So I'm going to kind of just give you the reader's notes of this as opposed to try to read everything with you, because Claremont's so wordy, and sometimes that doesn't help that I kind of get off topic. So, all right, here we go. So the professor's concerned with Kitty. She wanted to be an X-Men. It's not like her. I love this art here. I love how shadowed he is. And Ileana is her roommate and hope that they talk things out. He's thinking of Amara now and how it's getting cold. When she goes to sleep, he's going to have the New Mutants put her in bed, and then he needs to schedule medical examinations for Roberto and Rain. And so here he talks about a Marvel Team Up Annual 6 here, something that was with them. They were injected. I did not cover that particular issue, so I did skip over it. So on that Marvel um, fan site that I put on the links below, feel free. It'll give you a link to that, and you can see how it kind of went out here. But basically, they teamed up with Cloak and Dagger and were injected with a synthetic mutagen. So, all right. He now thinks of Lilandra, who is gone with the Starjammers. He misses her, and then he feels that scanning wave. This is dealing with a Secret Wars. This is the Beyonder doing a scan, and Chris Claremont is making sure that to let us know that something's up, but that this is the Beyonder scanning the Earth. And it will lead to, like I said, the Secret Wars. And I have 6 issues on a playlist. So 6 issues down, 6 to go. It's a 12 issue limited series that I am covering. So, and so he says he should use his powers to see what's going on, but then that's going to take too much time, and who's going to look after the kids? So the next morning, the kids are all working on 1980s computers. Boy, has life changed here. So, of course, Cannonball feels like he's not getting it, and everybody else seems to uh, get it here. I love the coloring here. I love this. Honored teacher, would you explain? Because she's confused as how to the computer works. Of course, we're gonna have more and more computers. So I love Rain here. So it says after he's explained so soon, so he doesn't really explain it. Amara's a barbarian, a heathen savage, but she gets the hang of these gadgets faster than me. It's not to face facts. I'm as stupid as I am ugly. Um, Rain has a bit of a self esteem issue based on how she was sort of brought up. And of course, the professor catches those thoughts, and she's like, "How can Rain think that? That just isn't so. But how to convince this poor girl here?" So, all right. So after that, they go with Stevie to kind of like physical education as they practice dancing, and then of course here's Kitty, and look at Rain here, and she just totally loves this, and even you can see going into the wolf form, and Cannonball admonishes her for doing that in public. And Amara doesn't get it, but of course, they don't explain to her that most people don't trust mutants, which is silly because there's so many superheroes. How can they now tell who's immune and who isn't? But of course, that's Marvel's way because the mutants represent disenfranchised groups. At that time, it was like blacks. Now it's like, well, everybody else nowadays, just whatever you want. So that's what the mutants represent here. So, Kitty says a layoff. It's okay. Some people want to, show off once in a while, and says, "Hey, when I did it, Storm also harped on me. It's okay." So she leaves with Doug when he says, "Hey, want to go to the mall?" And she's like, "Sure." Back then, the mall was the place to be. So and then Rain apologizes here. And so now we're going to go into the danger room here. You can see Stevie's on the controls here. So we're going to have a lesson here with Magma. 3 pages to go here. So he gives her code name, which is going to be Magma. And so he says, what I want you to do today is just burn this block. He wants a demonstration of her power. And she says, Professor, I'm not sure I can, if I lose control as I've done before. And Professor S says, you have no fear of that. I'll be monitoring the situation telepathically. And she says, you'll be inside my mind, but you said you'd never do that. And he says, it's for your protection. I cannot teach you until I know precisely what you can do. Um, the physical and psionic mechanism that allows it. You yourself are worried about things getting out of hands. And she's like, but I never imagined you'd come into my mind. Is that what your word is worth? I will not be lied to. I am not a slave to be paraded about and made to perform on command. I'm a freeborn citizen of Nova Roma and I'll be treated as one. And he's like, Amara, wait. And then he calls her out again. And so Amara's in bed, but she can't sleep. She's still crying here and says, well, he could have forced me to go in there, but he didn't. That should count for something. And he's not evil. He treated me with courtesy and kindness, and why cannot I repay him in kind? She's, of course, just very afraid of her powers here. So what she's really afraid to is what if the professor sees inside her and sees something um, that is different, and she's afraid of that. Then, as she's going through, she's just saying, I'm not fitting in here. So, sees a light and sees that the professor is talking on, with whatever you'd call it, with Lilandra here. And so, of course, she's trying to regain her empire, and he couldn't go because he has to train the new mutants. Um, and so Amara was watching, and she's gonna slip out before the professor notices. But of course, he notices, and he goes, "What's done is done, Amara. Hiding or running away changes nothing, makes nothing better." He says. So here we got the last page here. A lot of drama in this issue, hardly any action at all. So you can see why these comic books, again, it's not that the story is not good, it's just most people want stuff blowing up. But this is like a drama after drama just being done with Marvel characters here. So Professor goes, I think we're overdue for a long chat. And so he asks who that is. He says it's Landra. Says why'd she leave. So we get the explanation, to get her uh, um, empire back. And of course, why didn't you go with her? And it's because, I have responsibilities to teach you people. Not quite like that. I'm paraphrasing, of course. So the professor says, I love the silhouette here. The professor says, people need to be trained, or a lot of harm can be. And she goes, is that like almost destroying that city? And he's like, yep. And so she says she wants to go home, but realizes it's a duty for her to stay. So, and the professor says, responsibility, obligation, the hallmarks of growing up and becoming an adult. It's hard, but it's a reality we all must face. And so we get to the last panel. Have you ever failed with a student? And professor says, oh yes, but that will never stop me from trying. In that, you're very much like my father. I came to tell you I was going home. Now I think I'll stay. I'll do my best to learn, honored professor, and be worthy of your trust. Next, do you believe in magic? So, real quick, the Magic Limited series is I'm going to do next, but it's going to be all narrated. It's 4 issues. I'm not going to spend an hour and a half. Chris Claremont writes it, and it basically takes over what happened while Magic was in Belasco's realm. So anyway, hope you enjoyed it. A lot of drama in this. So some people like it, some people don't. Some people just want the action. I am covering this because I'm covering this Chris Claremont era of X-Men, and this is part of it. So like and subscribe. I do thank you for listening. Goodbye.